Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the course of Academic Reading and Writing. The topic of this lecture is Schema Theory and I'm your teacher Muhammad Asif Khan, lecturer, Department of English, Kohat University of Science and Technology. Discussion agenda for today's class is that first of all, I will tell you that what is schema, and I will provide you an example of schema for the better understanding of the concept. After that, I will explain the characteristics of the schema, and we will discuss that how does schema influence our comprehension. After this initial discussion, we will move towards that what is schema theory and what are the central claims of this very theory. In the end, we will discuss the relationship of schema theory and reading comprehension, because the course in which we are, that is academic reading and writing. So we will relate this very theory with the reading comprehension. Now let's move towards the first slide. What is schema? A schema is a generalized description, or it is a conceptual system. Basically, that generalized description or a conceptual system is for the understanding knowledge, that how knowledge is represented and how it is used. So basically, schema is a generalized description for understanding knowledge, that how knowledge is represented and how it is used. Another way of describing the concept of schema is that it is a cluster of related pieces of information, knowledge, and memories, which we can also name as experiences, that are stored in the mind. How data is stored in our mind, that is being described, or the system that is often conceptualized about the storage of information, knowledge and memory in the mind is called schema. So a schema is a generalized way for understanding that how knowledge is represented and how knowledge is used, or we can say that the clusters of related pieces of information, knowledge and memories, the way in which these very pieces of information, knowledge or the memories are stored is called schema. We can also describe this very word schema as a cognitive framework. It is not a normal structure or a framework. It is a cognitive framework or a cognitive structure or a cognitive concept, as it is a system for categorizing and organizing information, knowledge, and memories. When we categorize and organize these very things, it helps us to interpret the information that is already present there in our mind, or the information that we receive from outside. So basically, it is a framework, or it is a structure, or it is that systematic concept. But this is not the simple framework, structure or a concept. It is a cognitive framework, and this framework is for the categorizing and organizing information, knowledge and memories. And in the end, we see that this categorization and organization of information helps us to organize and interpret information. So basically, when we are organizing information, it can be helpful for us, and it allows individuals to take shortcuts in interpreting the very huge or vast amount of information that is available to the human beings in our environment. So every time when we come across any experience, schemas or schematas helps us in a very short form to interpret that very new information. So basically, this framework, systematic organization or categorization of the knowledge helps us to understand and interpret information. Dear students, we can also define this very concept as schemata can represent knowledge at all levels. It is the representation of knowledge at all levels, and that starts from ideologies and cultural truths, and it goes up to the knowledge about the meanings of particular word. So we can say that this very representation of knowledge, that is from micro level to the macro level. It starts from the understanding of a particular word and how that word is related to the different ideas or the concepts that gives us the knowledge of a particular concept, particular object or particular situation. And in the end we see that when we collectively look at all that pieces of knowledge, we move towards the big ideologies and the overall cultural truths. So these schemas can represent knowledge at all levels. We have schematas to represent all levels of our experiences. These experiences at all levels of abstractions. Abstraction means the quality of dealing with ideas rather than events at different levels. So experiences are abstract things, and we see that most of the time schematas are there to represent all levels of our experience. And even we see that the abstractions are also represented by these schemas. We can say that actually our schematas are our knowledge. These schemas are our actual knowledge, and all of our generic knowledge is embedded in schematas. So schemata and knowledge are synonyms to each other, and we see that how that very knowledge, how that information, how these memories and experiences that are organized, and these very experiences are categorized in our brain. All that information is under the domain of the concept of schema. Let's move towards an example, and from this example it will be easy for us to understand the concept of schema. So the first thing is that mind is very similar to a hard drive in the CPU. We see that same like hard drive, mind is that organ where all the information is stored. So mind is like a hard drive, and schema is that structure or framework very similar to the folders in the hard drive. We see that in folders we group different files of similar type, and schema is very similar to the folders of the hard drive, and it plays the same role which folders play in the hard drive. In mind we see that schema are those folders where we see that the different files of similar type of information are put together. So individual files in that whole schema are having a very close resemblance to the pieces of information or the knowledge or the memories or experiences which we have. So mind is like hard drive, schema is like folder, and individual files that are put into the folders are those pieces of information or knowledge or memories which we human beings have. So that is the first example. Now let's move towards another example, and by this very example it will be easy for you to understand the concept of a schema. For example, a simple way to think about the schema for dog is that within that schema, you most likely have the knowledge about dogs. For example, generally we have the concepts that dogs are the animals that bark, and they have 4 legs, they have sharp teeth, most of the dogs have hairs, and that very animal has a tail. So these are some of the general informations that are there in our mind about the dogs. So a simple example is to think of a dog is that it barks, or it has 4 legs, and it has teeth, hair and tail. When we move towards the more detailed and specific information about the dogs, then we have pet information, which defines the types of these very dogs. For example, German Shepherd. When we name any dog as German Shepherd, then a specific picture comes to our mind, and here I am displaying a picture. I believe that the picture which you have in your mind will closely resemble to the dog. This dog also has 4 legs, it has teeth, hairs, tail. All these things are similar to all other types of dogs, but those dogs are different from this dog, and because of some of the specific qualities, this dog is German Shepherd. And the other dog, the one I am displaying now, this is very much famous dog in our area, specifically in the KPK area, but overall in Pakistan we are very much familiar with this type of dog, bully dog, and this very dog is very famous in KPK area. This very dog also has all the general characteristics of the dog, but it is very different from German Shepherd. In the same way, Bulldog, that is basically an English dog, but we see that this type of dog is also famous in the Pakistani areas, and this dog is different from the first 2 dogs, and that is because of those schemas, because we have those specific informations about all these dogs that differentiate these specific dogs from the general category of the dogs. Generally, we have basic information about or general information about a dog, but these specific dogs have specific characteristics that are different from others. So all this information is categorized, and because of this categorization, we can easily distinguish between different types of information, different type of categories, different type of the events, and other distinctions which we can make is just because of the organization of the information into the different folders. So now I think that because of these 2 examples where I linked schema with the concept of hard drive, and here we see that how we can categorize the information about the dogs, you will be clear about the schema. So your knowledge of dogs might also include the facts that they are mammals, and thus they are warm-blooded and bear their youngs as opposed to laying eggs. So this is very scientific information, but this is another way of categorizing the information about this very animal. Here we are discussing the facts that they are mammals and they are warm-blooded and they are not laying eggs, they bear their young ones. This is another way of categorizing the same information about the same type of animals. How we categorize all these things, that depends upon our personal experiences. So the knowledge of a dog as a pet that is domesticated and loyal, or as an animal that is most of the time feared, because there is a chance that it will bite you or attack you, it may be the part of our schemas that deals with our personal experiences. So in the first part, we discussed that how generally we have the concept of a dog, then we have the knowledge about the specific dogs, then we can categorize the information about the same animal in a very scientific manner, and in the end we see that with each and every animal or each and every object that comes into our experience, we have some personal experiences that also goes into the development of our schema. So each new experience that comes in our life, it incorporates more information to one's schema. So when we discuss the concept of schema, actually this is the folder where the new information or new experience or any new knowledge that comes to us that adds to or that develops our already present schema. Up till now, as we discussed two examples about understanding the concept of schema, we see that for every subject we have a schema. But when we study that subject in detail, it enhances our information. And in this way, we fill our schema with new ideas. What happens when we study that subject, actually that develops, that enhances our information or experience about that very subject, and in that way we fill our schema with new ideas. So these are the examples, and now let's move towards the characteristics of schema. Basically, schemas are dynamic, and we see that they develop and change with the passage of time, and that development and that change is based on the new information and experiences. So when we see that schemas, they are developing or they are changing, actually this very dynamic characteristic of schema, it helps us to comprehend new information. And when we are comprehending new information, it improves the already present information, already present experience, and already present knowledge, or we can say that it improves our schemas. So when we discuss the schemas, it improves information processing and our comprehension. So these are the characteristics of schemas, that it develops, it changes with the passage of time, and that change and development is based on new information, and in this way we comprehend new knowledge, and schemas helps to process and comprehend that new knowledge. So that is the first characteristic of schema. Schemas guide how we interpret new information, and these schemas might be quite powerful in their influence when we are interpreting new information. And we see that it has a strong impact on our mindset, and we see that sometimes we sway because of the powerful influence of schemas. So it helps us to make sense of the complexity of this very world and the information that is coming to us. So if we are not having schemas, it will be very difficult to understand the complexities of the information that we are gathering and accumulating from all around us. Another important characteristic of schema is that it includes generalizations about situations, about people, and even about places. And when we make generalization, it helps us to save our cognitive energy. Stereotypes are an example of social schema, and we see that these very stereotypes, when we are using them, we generalize about a group of people. And when we generalize about group of people, it saves our energy, and specifically our cognitive energy. What are stereotypes? Stereotypes are widely held, and most of the time these are fixed and oversimplified images or ideas of a particular type of person or a thing. For example, about Japanese, we have stereotype ideas. And what type of stereotypes we have about Japanese? For example, when the name of Japanese comes to us, we think that they are the people who are known best when it comes to technology. They are very hardworking people. That is another stereotype about Japanese. They are always very organized, and sometimes we see that they are very shy. These are stereotypes, and it is not possible that all Japanese have the same characteristic which I defined in the stereotypes about Japanese. But often we generalize when we are developing a schema about any specific group of people or any particular type of things. So at that time we develop a generalization about that thing or that group of people, and schema includes those generalizations about situations, people and places. And this generalization or these schemas are very helpful to save our cognitive energy. So these are the three characteristics. Now let's move towards that. What is schema theory? Schema theory is basically a branch of cognitive science that is concerned with how the brain structures knowledge. And the term which I use here, cognitive, it means relating to or involving the process of thinking and reasoning. So schema theory deals with that, how the brain structures knowledge. And we see that a schema is an organized unit of knowledge for any subject or event. So schema theory deals with that, how brain structures knowledge, and schema is an organized unit of knowledge. So how we develop schemas according to schema theories? According to schema theory, we see that these schemas are based on our past experiences, and it is assessed to guide current understanding of action. So actually there are two parts. In the first part, we see that these schemas are based on our past. And when it comes to the present information that we are receiving, the reception, comprehension and interpretation of the new knowledge, these very schemas guide us to understand the current actions and current knowledge that is available to us, current information that is available to us. So we can say that schema theory states that all the knowledge that is there in our mind, in our brain, that is organized into units. And when we see that this information is structured, that information is categorized, then we see that this helps us to understand in the better way the current information, the current actions, the current knowledge, the current experiences. So it is the theory which attempts to explain the concept that how our mind organize information, knowledge and memories. Schematas represent knowledge about concepts, objects, and the relationship they have with other objects. when we are discussing any object, on the one hand we store the information that is based on the similarities. In the same way, we also develop these very schemas that are based on the differences between the two concepts, two objects, situation, events, or other differences between the things. So schematas represent knowledge about concepts, objects, and the relationship they have with other objects, situations, events, even the sequences of the events, or action and sequences of actions. So all these things are related with one another. So relationship, either that is the relationship of similarity or the relationship of differences, that helps us to categorize the information. So schema theory is basically in discussing these very attempts to explain that how mind organize all that information. The main contributors of schema theory, three important personalities which I will mention here and give you the brief introduction of them. The first one is Frederick Bartlett, and this person is a British psychologist, and he is often considered as the first professor of experimental psychology at the University of Cambridge. And he is one of the forerunners of cognitive psychology as well as cultural psychology. So this is one of the main contributors of schema theory. Another important name is Jean Piaget, and he is one of the most important scientist, especially known for his works with the development of human knowledge. And he is the one who believed that knowledge was constructed on a cognitive structures. And he believed that people develop cognitive structures by accommodating and assimilating information. So these very two terms are very important in schema theory: accommodating information and assimilating information. Very important terms, but I'm not going to explain these terms here. The third important personality or main contributor of schema theory is Lev Vygotsky, and he was a Soviet psychologist and especially known for his contribution in the field of psychological development in children. So these three personalities are the main contributors of schema theory. Now let's move towards the central claims. As I already told you, that the central claim of schema theory is that our knowledge of the world is organized and categorized, and this organization and categorization of knowledge can influence our cognition and behaviors. So in mind, in our brain, all this information is organized and categorized, and when we come to that how this categorization and organization of knowledge helps us. So actually in this organization and categorization of knowledge, it influences our cognition of the different information that is coming to us, and it has a special influence on the behaviors of human beings. So this is the main claim of schema theory, that the organized knowledge of human beings has influence on the cognition and behavior of any individual. So how this very theory has a special relationship with the process of reading comprehension. As I told you that every individual has a special schema for everything. So before students they come to the school, they are already developed schemas about different things. So these very schematas become theories about reality. So for that reason we see that every specific culture, every specific society that has different definitions of reality, they have different definitions of truth, and their realities and their truths are different from the truths and realities of the other societies. And that is because of the previous knowledge of the individuals that are living in some specific society, culture, or environment. So schematas become theories about realities, and these theories not only affect the way information is interpreted, it also affects comprehension. On the one hand, we see that these theories not only affect the way information is interpreted, it also helps to continuously modify itself as the new information is received. So that is the main relationship of schema theory and reading comprehension. We already have specific schemas about different pieces of knowledge, and we see that when we are receiving new information, these very already present schemas, they affect the way information is interpreted, and in this way they affect our comprehension. But on the other hand, we see that these schemas continuously modify and developed as new information is received. So schema theory has strong relationship to reading comprehension, and its importance lies in this very concept, that how the reader uses these schematas. So schema theory is an explanation of how reader uses prior knowledge. And when it comes to the usage of the prior knowledge, basically this prior knowledge helps us to comprehend and learn from the text that is there before us. So reader continuously and most of the time we see that unconsciously use schematas, and these schemas and schema theory guides readers as they make sense of new experiences, and in this way it enables them to make predictions about the expectations and about what they might expect to experience in that specific given context. So this is all about schema and schema theory. In today's lecture we discussed that what is schema, and then I have given you 2 examples to understand the concept of schema, and we also discussed the characteristics and how does schema influence our comprehension. Later on we discussed the main concepts of the schema theory and how schema theory is related to the reading comprehension. So that is all about today's discussion. I hope that now you will be having basic information about schema and schema theory. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.